Do you really want to know what it feels like to be black in America? Do you really want to know?
They took me in all three, under 1,000 suns, to a foreign one. Chain metal cuff on my limbs, wooden gas cart whip order keeper. Iron muzzle trap noise song, chain christened, shade branded, liquid fire melt near rib heart cage. This journey will be long. 5 slaves for 3 tons, despite the ship days and months, floating on a seafloor of tears, one on top of the other, one step after the other. Packed inside disease, swollen bellies, deliverance. New promises to the world once celebrated, now cursed by legality, hearsay. I cry until the land is blurry, blind. You throw overboard the weak and sit. Urine, vomit, defecation, a hemorrhaging womb. Sweltering sun, organ, a distant moon, throat clog, fume, screams, vibrations, echo. Imprisonment can displace you from the inside out, you know. Profiteer this voyage from a barracoon port by way of Skywater Fort, Elmina, Bunce, Gory, and anywhere else they see fit for a man-child slave. Thorn, cotton, pod, flour, sugar, husk, cane, stalk, rice, swamp, tobacco, seed, rum and cash, wine and crop, await me. Quarantine, salt, pork, horse, beef, black-eyed pea, 8-ounce extract from sea, push starch, protein down, throat choke, speculum force feed device for a beast. Fatten for highest bidder in seconds, wealth power is of the essence. My home is far away from here. We are growing close. Cargo release, jump overboard, swim, drown. Others fly back, return to mother horn, father drum. Descendants will be soon in the afterborn. There will be 12 million slaves and a Negro child for each one. Ocean tears run deep, lost somewhere between heaven and home. Light years behind that ahead of me, what it be like on the other side of the salt sea. The salt sea glittering stones. Stand me up, stretch me wide, pinch my skin, pull my hair, stretch open my mouth. Good breed, I'll take this one. That one won't do. Nigger, witch, brute, heathen, savage. No one hears the cries of a man-made slave. Do they? I come from epic reflection in a 3-tier direction. Substantial baggage is excessive. Rest assured this covenant will be remembered for some time. I will be covered and return to you this place I call home. Look back for it, stretch for it. Please recall who I am. I call your name in honor, in sorrow, in light, in birth, in chains, in liberation. I call your name for wisdom, heart, and words in time. The story will be told, branch from my soul. The story will be told, branch from my soul. The story will be told, branch from my soul.
Other than that, it was quite a year. It seems like 2 years, instead of one. It's just been an eye-opening year from an African American standpoint and from an African American woman's standpoint, which is two different things. Like I say, back when we were growing up, it's just my mom didn't hardly let us leave the yard. She kept us, because there's so many of us. She had to keep us in the yard. She said, I had to keep you in the yard so I can keep my eye on you, Because if you go out in the street, somebody's going to do something to you.
Right. Right.
And so, we had the church next door to where we lived, so we could play in that playground. But other than that, we didn't get out of my mama's sight too much. And she was like they call her Mama Bear. She was one of those.
At this day and time, we look back and we think, why are we still having to deal with racial injustice after all that we've been through? So it's still very, racism is still very alive and well,
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
We've come short distance, but we have a long way to go still. Like I say, I've been here in Louisville over 50-some years. Been involved with the Office of Multicultural Ministries from its inception, back when it was called the Office of Black Catholics, and then it became the Office of Multicultural Ministries. And so just been around and been involved, and in community work as well as at my church. I'm a member of Christ the King Church at 44th and Broadway here in Louisville.
Awesome.
The Jim Crow area was started really in the early 20s, and so it flourished up through the late 50s, early 60s. So most of my growing up years was Jim Crow. And as children, you really don't know any better. We knew there were stores that you couldn't try on clothes, most of them. You couldn't eat at the lunch counters. You couldn't eat in the restaurants. You couldn't go to the parks. We had one park, Chickasaw Park. But it was just accepted, maybe, I guess your parents protected you and really didn't talk about the racial differences. We go overseas to fight for democracy, and we come back home to Jim Crow, where I can't remember Louisville having separate water fountains. As far back as I can remember, we could sit where we wanted to sit on the street cars. Didn't have buses until, I don't know when buses came in. But we never had that problem. But there were certain areas you couldn't use restrooms. There was a colored restroom at the Union Station, which is now the TARC headquarters. And there was one, you knew which places to go if you had to go to the restroom. I think where the Louisville Water Company was, that building had a restroom for colored, public restroom. But basically you were taught, go to the restroom before you leave home, because you won't have the opportunity later on until you get back home.
It saddens me that I'm saying that, because I would like to believe that we live in a world where people are valued, like King said, for the content of their character, not for the color of their skin. But if you are a darker person, it's rough for you in the United States of America.
Yeah, so people do not pay attention to the issues of black women the way that they do with other genders and other races. And, the data is there. You can go and watch as many TED Talks as you can find on it, that we are often ignored. And, there is just historical data that shows that black women have been put at the bottom of the food chain when it comes to getting attention for missing people, getting attention for cases of brutality or violence, and, murders. We're put at the bottom of attention that should be given to our stories as well, because we're, just as important as anyone else. So when it comes to Breonna Taylor, when I did find out about it, it just kind of, first of all, it shocked me.
Talk a little bit about, your initial reaction when you heard about Breonna Taylor's death. What were some of the things that went on through your mind, and, how did you feel, and how did you, respond in your own way during that time?
I thought it was so unfortunate and so sad, because she had her whole life ahead of her, and plus she was a first responder, and I'm sure that she was that ambulance riding down the street to save someone's life, to help someone's child. She didn't care about anyone's race or color, and I know she would be the type of person that would have a heart of gold. And she would be out there fighting if it had happened to someone else. She seemed like she was that type of person.
It's one of those things where you don't know God until you go through something, I think I cried for like 2-3 days, because I didn't even know about the story. It was one of those things that kind of, it pops up on Facebook and you're like, wait a minute, what? And then of course all the George Floyd stuff was going on. And so you start reading about her story and everything that was going on. And it's like, well, goodness gracious, like that could happen to me. You know, I live in an African American community, and it's high crime, high violence. And I've seen police outside of houses about to go in. And so I'm like, wait a minute, that could have been me, you know. What if they mistook my house for another person's house or anything like that? It touched me personally because I felt like, oh my God, that could have been me. And I live with my kids, and so I'm like, we all could have been out of here, you know, at the hands of police not doing their job.
I think just from being in the streets and hearing like how my friends are talking about it, there was peaceful protests, but there were also people who were coming in from out of town who were starting a lot of the mess and agitation and drama just because they could profit off it in some way, just because, you know, it's not their city, so it's easy just to go buck wild. But like here, we understood, like, yes, we are protesting, but people live here. Like, people have to wake up and go to school in the morning, or in the, you know, in the coming days, they have to continue about their days. But it doesn't help our city and the tragedy that we feel if we trash our community and destroy it even more than it has already been historically, you know, ravaged, you know, as it is now. But I think, you know, that's the main thing, is that understanding that a lot of these protesters who were doing that eruption were not from this city and didn't have any roots here to even care.
Yeah, that's good. I think it's good. You know, I don't agree with the destruction and all that. I don't agree with, but I mean, people are aware. You know, all people, not just the African American people, but all people are aware, and all people are speaking up and think this is not right. You know, and whether it ever will change or not, I don't know. This has been going on for generations, you know, and stuff. But now it's in our face. No, we call our politicians, you know, be on top of them. I've done that, you know, I've done that too, you know, stuff, and we need to get some more people to do that. Yeah. Stay on top of them. This is what you're supposed to be doing. This is your job. You know, you're supposed to be helping out, you know. And people in leadership roles anywhere, you know, because our pastors have not done a good job to me, I don't think. You know. I mean, just talk about it. You know, I have a couple of people at church that have really been upset about it. It's just like, Paula didn't even talk about it. I don't know if they've ever mentioned George Floyd's name from the pulpit. I don't think so. And I'm thinking, does that not matter to you? And it's almost like, have they been told not to touch on that? You know, it's not only my church. I've talked to other people from other churches, other denominations, said the same thing. You know, I thought, that's what they're up. That's part of your ministry, you know, to the people. That's part of your ministry, you know, to help people get through. Give us some words of encouragement, you know.
You know, to even when we was thinking with Brianna, you know, to say her name, it matters, you know, to be able to have that voice, to be able to let it be heard. Moms just did a protest that we partaked in, and me being a 20-year veteran, you know, the pain was so deep within me. I was hearing them saying no justice, no peace, you know, enough is enough. And honey, that drill sergeant came out and made, well, I was singing that thing, you know, telling them, you know, that enough is enough, you know, that, you know, we can walk until our shoes fall off. But we got to be able to get to the point where we stand, you know, as the front line people, you know, enough is enough, you know.
My husband and I had the same conversation, and it was pertaining to our son. Braxton, he's about to be 4 years old. And there are not moments that I wonder about his safety, what it's going to be like when he's older, if people are going to really see him for who he really is. And what I mean by that is how God sees him. Because I know having to raise a black son, we're going to have some impactful conversations and critical conversations. For example, I just remember my brother when he was in high school getting pulled over all the time driving while black. And he was just crossing the bridge going the speed limit. And it was the same cop all the time. And finally, you know, my brother did have a conversation with my parents about it. And my dad, gave him some, very, impactful tools and just different things on how to navigate through that. But I would say there's not a moment, there's not a day that I don't go by and I don't think about, what about my son? But again, I go back to Matthew chapter 6. And I tell myself, I can't live in fear. My son can't live in fear. But I have to make sure that I give him the tools and give him the knowledge and the wisdom on how to navigate through things. And sometimes things happen to people that they definitely didn't deserve, because no child deserves to die. Police brutality is real. Racism is real. And so in order for us to combat it, we have to start having these conversations. We have to start allowing, training our police force, training other individuals that impact our black youth, our black males. I see it all the time. When I was a middle school teacher, I had to have critical conversations with our black males. And so that is something that I hold deep dear into my heart, that I know that not only am I raising a black female, I'm definitely raising a black male. And if I'm going to be 100% honest and transparent, I know my son is going to have it a lot harder than my daughter, because he is a black male. But I know without a shadow of a doubt that myself and my husband and our village is going to do their best to communicate with him and to give him the tools that he needs to be successful.
Even though our sister Breonna Taylor lost her life, she really inspired a lot of us to stop being so hesitant and to go after those rights and those liberties that we are missing. And for her, I am forever indebted and grateful, for her sacrifice that and I don't even want to say sacrifice as if it had to happen. But she was a martyr. She was a martyr. And she inspired me to do something about it. And so I do appreciate that push from her and her now an ancestor, and the other ancestors who I have behind me, like my grandmother, to do something more. And so that's what I'm
All right, my name is Ashley Cathy. This piece in front of us is called Kindred. And this piece was done throughout the 2020 uprising last year in Louisville, Kentucky. It was commissioned by JCTC, and we're here on campus in their courtyard. These pieces were supposed to speak to the community and the people and the demographic of this area, as well as the students. And I wanted to do a piece that was different from my other pieces. I usually do pieces that have a lot of color and that are bright, with smiling faces and everything, but that wasn't the space that I was in when I was creating this. And I wanted to make a statement that was more about the color black, the color white, and then also where we stand in between that.
I think everyone responded differently. Some people went straight out the door and right into the streets.
Yeah.
And others, I think, like myself, shut down to try to figure out what to do next, because there was just too many emotions happening at the same time to even go outside and help. Right. And then there was a point where, I was able to participate in one of the marches locally. But I realized we all have different callings.
God, I didn't know how much I relied on God and prayer, which I did all the time. My mother was a prayer, and we were raised up with that, and we went to Catholic school. So I always did, and I'm thinking all day, every day, in any moment I'm saying a prayer,
Yeah.
And I didn't realize I was doing it till one day I was talking out loud because somebody else had died. And I thought, oh, God bless their family. God bless us all. May we be healthy. May we be strong, just hanging in there, stuff like that. But
And like everyone else, completely unexpected. One day you are literally going about your normal life, and then the next day everything shuts down. And as a person that's an administrator, you have to figure things out very quickly and think about the needs of all the different demographics that you serve. And so, I'm thinking about my students, I'm thinking about my own personal family, I'm thinking about my staff members, my colleagues, the campus as a whole. What does that look like for everyone? How do we move forward? And with it happening mid-semester, it was kind of nerve-wracking for a lot of our students, because we literally were about to open a performance the next day. And it was heartbreaking to those students that didn't get to do their show, especially the ones that were graduating. But, you know, I work with some of the best people in the city, and I say that all the time. People are experts in their field, and they come in and they do their thing. And we just kind of came together and brainstormed, like, how do we make lemonade out of this lemon that's happening right now as far as the academic portion of it. And so we came together, we were able to still pull off a virtual performance for the students so they could feel accomplished in all the work that they had put in. As far as our staff members, I felt like my job as an administrator was just to support them, however they needed. If they needed to take a mental break day, if they needed to, you know, step away for a second to handle family issues, if they were sick themselves or had a family member who was sick, if they had a loved one who was, you know, in the hospital or dying, you know, my job was to step in and just support however we could. And so that's what myself and my leadership team did from March 13th when the shutdown happened all the way through, I'd say, August when we were able to open back up.
Been a really difficult year. It has. I've had several friends where I live in a small town have died, have passed away. You know, husband and wife team, you know, within 2 weeks of each other and stuff. So that's been really difficult. And I mean, it's people that I know personally and have known all my life. So it's been really, really hard. You know, it's been really difficult. And I had COVID. My sister and their brother had COVID. My sister is still struggling. She's on oxygen and seeing all kinds of specialists now to trying to get her straightened out. And she's got a ways to go for it. That was in February, and she's still struggling and all that stuff. So we have had some difficult times, and it has been really, really hard.
So I went back and got retested, and then I tested positive. I didn't run a fever so much, but I was very achy. Just the aches and the pains, and I felt like everything on my body hurt. And I felt like something was on my chest. I had a really hard time breathing. But I was too scared to go to the hospital because I thought, okay, if I go to the hospital, they're going to put me on a ventilator. And it wasn't looking too good, you know, at that point if you were to go to the hospital, especially for African-American people. So I was really scared to go. So I just drank lots of water. My husband moved into another room. But still after 2 weeks, you know, I was still like very lethargic, and breathing was hard, and just I was so tired. And then people talk about COVID brain. That
It's
affected
real.
me, yeah,
That's
for
so
like
real.
a month or so.
Yeah.
And I've heard, you know, people had lost their taste and smell, and I lost mine for a week. But that was the thought of not having that return. I don't know why that was making me more anxious, you know.
Yeah.
But I felt better, you know, after a couple weeks, and then I got the vaccine. So after the first shot, I got sick again. I got sick after the first shot.
Yeah.
But it was 24 hours.
Yeah.
And I thought, it's nothing like COVID.
God, I did catch COVID, and I did everything everyone told me to do, and I mean, I got pictures of me with gloves on, a mask, everything, you know, but it's just really sneaky. COVID is sneaky. I always said it was, because I was like the #1 person not to catch it.
Yeah, I remember you used to wear the gloves all the time and didn't want to touch anything.
Yeah.
You were worried about me, and so
I was worried about you.
about everybody, and you
Yeah.
took all the precautions.
I
But
did.
you know, it just goes to show you just never know. There's only so much, you know, research on it, and we were just kind of learning as we went.
Bleach didn't stop it. Lysol didn't stop it. Nothing
Clorox
stopped it.
didn't stop it.
Nothing.
Nothing could stop it.
Nothing
But
stopped it.
Jesus.
But the good man upstairs, that's right, only Jesus.
But I have never not believed in God. Some people do have crises of faith and they don't believe in God, but I have never had that. So I always, when I'm in these rough patches, these crazy racially charged rough patches, I always know that God is going to take care of me and that I'm going to survive.
Talk a little bit about your faith during that time, because I know you had to have been afraid, you know, just to see all the numbers, because I know watching the news, you're somebody who really values the news, you know, and seeing it every day, you know, that these cases are rising, and then you also see like the racial violence. You know, how did that really impact your life and just your spiritual journey of growing your relationship with God, you know, your faith? How did it really impact that?
Well, I know God is the ruler of all, and without Him, we're nothing. And I know God is going to fix this, and um, you know, we can't be everywhere. We can't think of everything. We got to hold on to God's unchanging hand because He's the only one that's going to get us through
Going
this.
on, and it seemed like everything was being thrown at me, and the only thing that I kept, even though it was a down moment and I went through all the emotions. I went through the anger, the bitterness, the sadness, the depression, all of that. um my faith was the only thing that kept me going.
But just having the time to really be able to focus on those things, because I've been going and going and going. We had all been moving and moving and moving, and now it was time to sit down and heal. It was time to do the hard work, the things that hurt. It was difficult. It was it had its ups and downs, and it had its moments to where it was hard. The loneliness, but continuing to anchor myself. God was my anchor. That is the only way that I made it.
But within the prayer closet and within the GAP process, which is I'm talking about in my book, there's 5 foundational tools. And I like to say this is like the foundation, the groundwork. The first one, which is practice. It's a practice. It's a skillful habit. So I get up, I do the same thing, so I practice. The second thing is prayer. The third foundational tool is meditation. The fourth one is releasing and self-reflection. So those are 5 foundational tools that I do within my GAP practice.
There are a lot of women who have left the workforce because they had to do their own schooling of their children. They had to take care of people who were sick and at home. They had high-touch jobs, and they couldn't do those jobs. Even a manicurist, they couldn't do that. Hairstylists, other folks, they just couldn't do those jobs.
True. Okay, so I am an instructor in Indiana, and also have a license in Louisville, Kentucky. I've been teaching now for 23 years, and I love it. I teach hair, nails, and skin. And I started Cardinal Beauty Supply about 5 years ago. It was like God gave me the dream, and I never thought of doing wigs because I always did hair. And you try on the right wig until you get the wig. But once that happened, I had to stop because of COVID, and we didn't really know enough about it. So I just felt like we couldn't really try the wigs on anymore. They couldn't touch the wigs, and so my business kind of zipped down a whole lot.
I've been able to see people come together more, especially with the Black community. I just love to see how we are now. I'm gonna put that out there because prior to pandemic, some of us was not supporting Black business like we should have been. So it allowed us to really look into our own community and say, oh, okay, this person, knows how to, cook, or this person knows a little thing about plumbing, or this person, knows how to do photography or things of that sort of nature. We began to look and see within. And I think in order for our Black community to strengthen, we must go back to the roots. It makes me think about, Tulsa, how it was powerful, the Black Wall Street and things like that. And even Louisville, Kentucky had their own Black Wall Street, but then redlining came about and, we had to move out. But I think it's important for us to go back to our roots, go back to our ancestries, look deep and see what gifts we have and begin to support one another.
At the end of 2019, I lost my job. I was laid off. And so it was pre-pandemic, pre-everything that was going on. And so I was trying to figure out some things and just knew that I was going to be hired. But here comes COVID, and nobody's really hiring. Nobody's really even reaching out in the jobs that were hiring. They weren't paying what I needed to be, successful for my family. So just as an African-American woman, I saw some of the things that we as African Americans go through because I had to end up getting Medicaid. I had to end up getting on unemployment and going through those things and trying to figure out those things not only as a woman but as an African American woman at that, getting hung up on, getting back and forth and just doing different stuff. And so that whole process of even trying to find health coverage because I had never been without it, and then the back and forth with Medicaid saying, your coverage is going to end here, and just trying to figure things out so that me and my children could just go do different things, because as an African American, unfortunately, I have a couple of health issues, just are hereditary and things like that. So I have to go to the doctor a lot. So just seeing that aspect of COVID, of what it was doing to the healthcare system, trying to find doctors, trying to find reliable doctors, and trying to find some type of sanity as well. Just, because being without work, it created already something in itself.
Hi, my name is Ashley Cathy. I'm the CEO and founder of Healing Walls Project. We're here at Kroger on 28th and Broadway doing a new mural. I have with me Michelle Johnson, our CFO, Keely Falcone, one of our artists, and Mackenzie Taylor, our intern. We are here at 28th and Broadway doing this over 3,000 square foot massive mural on the side of Kroger. This location, we chose this location because of the need for healing, particularly in this neighborhood and particularly right here within these 2 blocks of Broadway. A lot has happened over the past 10 years in this neighborhood, especially right here. There have been great things that have happened, community building that has happened, but then there's been a lot of tragedies. And with that, public art is a way to bring hope and healing and bring the arts back into the community. Public art brings down the violence. It creates ownership, and it's been proven and also seen that it just brings joy to the community. Also, for this particular location, we want to let people know that Black and brown artists can do the work. And here we are proving to everyone, to ourselves, that we are here and our voices deserve to be heard and we deserve to be seen on a massive scale. I want to include this. The other part of this project, right on the sidewalk here on 28th and Broadway, we did a poetry installation. So all of the poets are from the West End or currently living in the West End, and they are haikus that speak to what the West End means to you and to healing in the arts. So the program is called Heal Out Loud, and that was in collaboration with another Black-owned business, Lipstick Wars Poetry, with Rihanna and Nicole Thornton, and that experience has been extremely eye-opening. So we're hitting 2 different demographics. Everyone can see this mural, but the people that are walking on the sidewalk are going through their own source, different. It's a different journey for them. I was that person walking to this Kroger, and feeling hopeless, going through so many emotions, going through shame and all those things. And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be encouraging if you could walk down the street and have words from people who are like you, giving you words of hope and of wisdom right on your sidewalk on your way to your journey. So that program is called Heal Out Loud. It's another form of public art. We don't just do murals. We do any type of liberating art form that is speaking to the public and on a public platform that amplifies BIPOC artists.
I think a lot of time it's just prayer. It's prayer, and I also think about my mom and my grandparents and their grandparents and my ancestors, and I think, how did they get through this? And if they could get through a lot more than what we're going through right now, then I should be able to handle that.
I would just want the larger community to acknowledge, the things that are going on in our world, and be accountable and be engaging. I think that those are the things that I would want the community to do, to acknowledge the pain, be accountable of the pain, and be engaging to move forward and rectify the pain that a lot of African Americans go through, and be the voice. The world, our economy, our health disparities. COVID took the veil off, You know, our former president took the veil off of racial, discrimination and, all of these things. So, I mean, all of these things, the veil has been poured off. And that I think that it's important that we all acknowledge it and move for a better, greater good of the country and not, based off of our own interests.
One of the signs of hope, I'll tell you, it happened on this campus. We had a new president come in the middle of all of this, and I told her, I said, God love you. You have a very difficult job happening right now between trying to juggle a new job and all the different things happening in the world and trying to make sure that our campus stays the course with the continued legacy. But one initiative she started was a diversity committee across our campus that was looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion needs for everyone, no matter the age or background. And she was able to pull together people from all the different schools, all different levels. We would normally never interact with each other just because we kind of stay in our own silo. But being able to come together with them and have just honest, transparent conversations. I had a teacher who was so honest. She said, I'm just going to be honest. I'm white and I don't know what to say. And I looked at her and I said, I can appreciate that. I said, thank you, and she meant it from the bottom of her heart. She didn't mean it to be funny. She just really didn't know what to say, what to do. And I told her, I said, that is the beginning of the step that needs to be taken. When you can be completely transparent and honest and put yourself out there and be vulnerable, then people are willing to have those conversations that need to be had. And that's how we move forward. I was like, you can't move forward if you can't be transparent. And, there are some people who are still uncomfortable with that. They want to, say the right thing and do the right thing all the time. And there's a time and a place for that, but there's also a time and a place to show people who you are so that they can trust you and that you can truly build those authentic relationships that will break down the barriers that we speak of. We always talk about breaking down barriers and moving racial justice in a better way. Well, that can only be done if you truly get to know who people are and appreciate them for who they are. And so when those type of conversations were happening on our campus this year, it gave me hope. I was like, oh, this is good. And it was so many people from different backgrounds. You had your more wealthy backgrounds and more middle of the road, blue collar workers, and just people from different racial backgrounds and economic backgrounds. And to have that come together and us to have some honest, candid conversations about where we are, how do we move forward, and how can we help our community, that gave me hope this year, because I saw that even though I felt like I sometimes was alone in this work, I realized I wasn't alone when we had those conversations.
Well, I'm seeing a lot in our young people, a lot of mobilization, and I love that, and I love seeing that in my boys. I love seeing that in my young men. It's like, okay, we're gonna learn how to do this. We're gonna learn how to play the game. I say it that way, but but we're also going to be proud of who we are. We're going to be proud, and seeing a lot of how woke young people are becoming, and it's so refreshing.
There's so many sides to this reality. The first one is to acknowledge there's racism, and for white people to acknowledge there's racism. Then there is the need for all of the other communities who have had racist experiences to acknowledge that there's still issues within their own communities that they need to work on as well and take accountability for, so that the argument does not always play out the same with the stereotype. I think that the conversations that are happening now are good. There's an open dialogue. The challenge I always have is that there's always realness and then there's commercial. And what I mean by that is once something impacts the pocket of organizations, businesses, private sector, the motivation may be money. And so everyone is quick to cancel television shows and quick to change their commercials and quick to do things that are great from the right place, but sometimes they're so fast without the conversation of the of why are we doing that?
Okay, I have to say this. The Black Lives Matter movement changed everything. Dismantle it is to deconstruct it. And so what you have to do, and deconstruction is scary, because you got to have a vision for what it can look like. You can't just tear it down. So defunding the police is a scary thing. But you cannot keep trying to fix a police force that has bias built into the system. And so you have to figure out a way that you can deconstruct it in order to build it back up again.
Yes.
And that's frightening to people, because a lot of people are deconstructionists, but they don't have a vision for the future, so they just tear it down.
Right.
But you can't, if you tear it down without a vision, you build it right back up in the exact same way. A lot of people have done that. They tear it down, they throw it, and then they build it right back up in the same way, because that's the only way they know how. Right. So you have to spend the time before you deconstruct it to figure out what the vision is. Right. And figure out what are the values, what are the principles for that vision, and then live that way.
Yes, yes.
But that takes some work. Yes. And it takes a boatload of committed people that are willing to go in that direction. And it's a power dynamic, because so folks don't want to let go of the power to do that, because certain people get power just walking down the street, and while it may be a privilege that they aren't aware of, they notice it when it's not there. They go crazy when it's not there. Screaming matches because they don't have that power. And so you have to be able to, sacrifice and lay some of that stuff down. And for a lot of people, that's the rub. They say, "Oh, I didn't know." But when it comes to next step, it's not. A lot of times people say, "I don't know what to do. I don't know what the next step is." But a lot of times the underlying issue is, "Hey, I'm getting some privileges from this system. I really don't want to lay it down."
And when you become overwhelmed in situations like this, where there is injustice, whether it be racial injustice, social injustice, or something you're trying to change, some kind of change you're trying to move forward, you have to find people who are in alignment with you and who believe what you believe and who are going to support you in that. And so I find my faith in my church family. I find faith in my friends that I believe, are in alignment with what I believe. They understand my lived experience, whether they are black or not, whether they are a woman or not. They understand it and they believe me, just like I would want to believe them in whatever their experience is. And then also in my family, people always say family is everything, family over everything. But I believe that truly going back to people that are not only your birth family, but who you have brought on as your family members, part of your circle, your village, that are going to support you and lift you up during this time. So
from day one, I told my boys that they are beautiful black kings. And I've always told them they could be anything that they wanted to be. And then just constant encouragement. You can do this. And you need to be proud of who you are. You need to hold your head high. And my husband is a wonderful role model for them, because he works every day, long hours, and would do anything for his sons. And I feel like he's showing them what it means to be a black father.
Personally, I found the importance of being with people, that we're all in this together.
Actually, at this point in time in my life, I draw my strength from the fact that when I see the diverse groups, and particularly the young people that are out there peacefully demonstrating and trying, making their voices known, so that it may impact those leaders and the powers that be to bring forth change. And that, along with constant prayer, I just feel like that hope. Because like I say, I'm not able to be out there with them, but I pray for them every day, and that gives me hope when I see that diverse group, that there are people of all cultures recognized, even if they're there because of some injustices within their culture, they're still all unified, and that gives me hope. And I just hope and pray that they can all be safe but they'll stay the course. Stay focused and stay the course.
Yes, ma'am. Where do we go from here, and more importantly, how do we get there?
Where do we go from here? I have a dream, sounding like Reverend Martin Luther King. Dr. Martin Luther King. I have a dream, that my brothers and my sisters will love one another.
Here's the deal. I don't need your apologies or pacification. I need you to do the work and go deep with genuine intentions. Real self-assessment evaluation, not that passive apathetic stuff either. Address the discomfort. Disrupt race obsessive compulsive disorder. Rummage through the psychosis. We need reformation, restitution, resolution to defend the needs and concerns of human beings as they are valuable as the sun to the earth like yours. I've got some rituals for protection, sacrificial burnt offerings, candle prayers, and sage to ward off generational curse demons. You should rethink your traditions. Control is a fool's fantasy and prideful is too. Let down the false sense of entitlement to solve the problem. For recognition, open, honest, transparent, understanding, acknowledgement, authenticity, community, patience, respect, communication, compassion, trust, no judgment. Just intercultural dialogue and conversation critical to the souls of its inhabitants. And love, real and true love. I won't accept nothing less. We got to return to the core essence of who we are, and that, I am sorry to say, is going to take some digging. It's going to take getting to the matters of the heart, the inauguration of real change for the next generation, for the coming consequence.